Yeah, I ended up painting for 22 hours in 3 days.
Wow.
Which was super intense. I cleaned 0 paintbrushes the whole time I was there. Like, I ended up coming home with a tub full of, like, just all of my, like, paint and paintbrushes just covered. But it was a really, really cool experience.
Hello and welcome to the TF Cast, your favorite arts and culture podcast. My name is Grum, and today is March 29th in the Solarium.
And I'm your host, Jacob Bases. Today with us, we have Markus Bean to introduce his art show coming up at the 410 Project called Mystic Wild. Is that correct, Marcus?
Yes, it
On
is.
the 19th of April.
21st.
21st of April. Perfect. Marcus, the expert, you should introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about the show.
Yeah, my name is Markus Bean. I am a artist living and working in North Mankato. I've lived down here for about 5 years, and during that time, disability gave me a whole bunch of time to sit in my house and make art. So I've taught myself a lot since then. Been making art my whole life, but I've really been able to focus on it this last handful of years. And now I've got enough for a show. So I'm looking forward to having my first solo show and putting all my stuff out there. I think it's going to be a really good time.
Sure. Would you tell us a little bit about kind of the early journey? Like you said, you've been an artist throughout your entire life, but you've kind of picked things up here recently more. What was your early art education like, or how did you pick it up?
Yeah, my mom is a really creative person, and so she was constantly like pulling out puffy paints to do a pair of kids before school every year, and they always had me in front of art supplies of some sort. And I took some art classes in high school, kind of like my senior year. I just like filled up as much as I could with study halls and art. And then besides that, it's always just kind of been a hobby until shortly before I turned 30. I panicked because I wasn't making art enough anymore. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And started making it more consistently then. And then again, in this last handful of years, I've really gotten to focus on it. And I've been able to learn a lot and build a lot of my skills. And Mankato has been the perfect place to do it and get involved in an art community that's so welcoming and accepting of diverse voices, and then also where there's not this like high bar where if you don't have an MFA, you're not gonna get your stuff shown anywhere. Like Mankato is the exact opposite of that, which has been really, really cool.
And you said earlier that this show is a culmination of like a series that you kind of just keep adding to over time.
Yeah. I've got a few different collections and series that are going to be kind of like all together in this show.
Okay.
The Wild series is probably the most prominent. It started last year with a piece called Wild Woman. It was one of the first pieces that I really like kind of documented my progress on social media. A lot of it was painted down in Sibley Park. And was kind of able to bring people that are supportive of my art along with it, which was really cool.
Cool.
So started with that one, and then I also have Wilds Within, which is a piece that touches on like growing up, going on hikes with my dad, and then also I lived in Alaska for a while when I was 18 and 19, and so it kind of tied that in. And then I'm currently working on a piece called Wild Moon. That is going to be kind of like the focus piece of the show. It's 3 feet by 4 feet, so it's a big one.
And how would you describe your work, both like in the mediums you like to use and like the overall feeling of?
Yeah. So I'm a visionary artist, which basically just means taking like your visions and dreams and then trying to translate that into a way where people can get kind of that sense of spirituality and appreciation for nature, and where like that's kind of like the feeling that people walk away from my art with. I've been studying a lot of people that do that art, which has been really cool. It's kind of where I got started on that path just by, learning more about the art that I appreciated. And in that, I typically use acrylic, but I also use a lot of watercolor.
Cool.
And was trying different techniques and kind of feeling my way through with that. And trying to welcome people into my inner world is really what this show's all about.
Love it. So it's like is it like kind of like a abstract realist kind of thing where it's like real things, but kind of.
Yeah. Always done with like kind of like a sense of like fantasy and like
Cool.
with the spiritual elements. I use a lot of like sacred geometry
Cool.
in Norse runes. I'm a Norse practitioner, so that comes into it a lot.
Heck yeah. That's cool.
I was about to ask to get like a general description of what someone might encounter when they see your art, but I feel like you just answered that on your own right there.
Definitely hippie vibes. Like overall, like the vibe is definitely like hippie vibes. Like I have people come up to me at like art fairs and stuff and be like, "Oh, like I can tell you're a hippie. Like I can tell that you meditate." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah. Like I don't know how I would have gotten here if I didn't."
Has that been a large part of the journey? How much of the spiritual tie-in has been part of the art practice as well?
Yeah, I think it's huge. Like I said, I like to go paint in Sibley when the weather is nice, which we are almost there, which is very exciting. And for me, that being out in nature and it kind of feeling like the interconnection of everything, but then also like that very human smallness we feel out in nature, I think is a big part of what I try to portray in my art. And then also just like these like little moments of like things that you might see out in nature and like isolating them so that it's just like this like feeling like you would get like if you were walking through the forest taking pictures of stuff. I just did a series called Forest Floor. That's just a bunch of 2.5 by 3.5 and then 4 by 6 watercolor pieces with just like mushrooms and crystals and snails and just a bunch of different ferns and whatnot. And it just kind of like, I think I did it to anticipate that being able to be out in nature again, and like having all of that stuff come up here in spring. And then also my mobility has been getting better in recent history. So I am hopeful to get out there and get some camping in and some hiking in this summer. So
Heck yeah. You got to meet my partner. She's a abstract realist mixed media artist, and what you're describing makes me picture her art for sure. So y'all got to meet.
For sure. Yeah.
And
we'll have to.
You said you were also going to be teaching a mandala class soon at 108?
Yeah, that's on April 29th. And we're calling it like meditative mandalas with Markus.
Cool.
When I first had moved down to Mankato, I at the time like would have professed that I like couldn't draw. And so I really focused on making mandalas because like you just have to figure out like certain patterns and then you can make all these different things. And so I was able to use that as a way to not have to like think too hard while I was making the art. Like I would just kind of like make a plan and then you just like really set into the meditation of art making. And that really helped me through a lot of my disability worsening and whatnot, and just really gave me like a grounding place.
Heck yeah.
And then after that, I started adding on like, okay, well, maybe I could draw trees. Like maybe I could draw this. Like maybe I could paint that. Like, and it's kind of snowballed from there.
Love it. And is this your first time doing any teaching?
It's my first time in a professional setting doing any art teaching. I grew up very involved with the Christian church, and so I did like a bunch of like kids activities and like teaching them crafts and stuff. And then I also volunteered at the Minnesota Zoo as a teenager, and I was there a ton and ended up like helping like decide like what crafts they would have for kids to come do at Christmas time and stuff like that, and kind of like running that room. So I've done more teaching with kids than I have with adults, but I'm really excited for this class. I ran my mom through it, and she over Zoom, and she had the time of her life. So hopefully everyone else will have the same experience.
Yeah, I've only done the thing where it's like a circle with all the teeth in it, and then there's different circles you put in it, and like move the pen in a circle.
Yeah,
That's the only way.
spirographs.
Yeah, that's the only way I've ever done that.
Love
so that sounds really
those.
fun.
You mentioned that the arts community has been like a really like a welcoming and good place to foster the arts. You also mentioned that you've had some issues with disability. Has Minnesota or this part of the state been like a place that's been able to take care of you well?
Yeah, I would say that Mankato definitely has been. I'm from like the south suburbs of the Twin Cities. And I was still working when I was up there. And then I had like a big like traumatic life event that kind of shifted things, and I just felt like I needed to move. I just started dating my wife, and so as I was talking about what I was gonna do, she's like, you know what? Like, I know you love to make art. Like, I can't imagine a better place for you to be. Like, things are different down here. Like, there's a sense of community. When I lived up in Alaska, I lived in a small town and really loved like that kind of like going to town and knowing everyone. And
Yeah.
I found that again in Mankato. You know, like if I go down to Old Town, like I'm gonna run into somebody that I know,
Yeah.
or meet somebody that I know somebody that I know. You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's a very small town. Well, definitely not being a small town.
Yeah, I actually think that's where I encountered you for the first time. Was you were vending on the patio at the wine cafe.
Yeah, I think
got
that's
like
right.
a yellow piece.
Yes,
I have that
yeah.
downstairs. So
I knew that you had bought something, but I couldn't remember what. I'm glad you
Yeah.
have that piece, though. I love that one.
yeah, it reminded me of the mural above the 410 project.
For sure, for sure. I'm actually doing a B series this summer, so I'm excited to get back to that theme.
Cool. I get also unreasonably excited about the springtime, and I like to go out and take photos of all the little things happening. I think the small bits of life popping up
I'll have
are
to talk to you about stealing some of your pictures for reference.
You're more than welcome.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, what kind of art do you have? Like, what else do you have coming up? Like, what can people expect to see in this show in particular when they look on the walls? Is it going to be all paintings, or?
Yeah, it's gonna be mostly watercolor and acrylic paintings. There's gonna be some like alcohol ink marker drawings too. And there's a few different like collections that I've done. My most recent collection that Wild Moon is kind of wrapping up is Me and the Moon collection. I started it back in October. And my Halloween collection kind of morphed, and then I just kept making moon art. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're doing a collection here. And so I've got a bunch of different moon themed pieces. Over the holidays, I did like moon ornaments out of polymer clay.
Fun.
And then I've got all of these minis that kind of incorporate elements from a set that I did of moons with women's faces in them. So I did 5 sets of the moon phase, and then they had like ferns and crystals and mushrooms and stuff coming out of them. And then I took those pieces and put them into the Forest Floor series, and then I've taken those, and those are all going to be on the Wild Moon piece.
Cool.
And then additionally, I'm working on an oracle deck with Esther Marcella Hoffman.
Cool.
And
Friend of the show.
Yeah, definitely. She seems like a friend of everyone.
Yeah, probably people who don't even know it. I think.
Yeah.
Esther's by their
definitely.
side.
Yeah, it's very rare for her to not refer to someone as her friend. So.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna have the 6 guides that are gonna be like kind of the 6 anchor cards for our deck, representing the different aspects. So we're going to have my art and then her writings for those 6 cards up.
What are the 6 guides? I'm unfamiliar.
Yeah, they are. So our deck is divided into like directionally, but then also each direction has an element associated with it. So the first one is east. So it's associated with like air in the morning, and the guide is an ancient one. So it's this like ancestor kind of like hovering in the air over the scene. And the idea is that these guides are giving the Wanderer, which is the name of our deck, the Wanderer's Oracle. So they're kind of like coming down and like imparting this wisdom to the Wanderer as they go through these various scenes. And then with fire, the direction is south, and it's going to be an eternal child. So it's like this kid that has a bucket where he's collecting rocks to make a fire pit. And then for west, the element is water, and there's going to be a mermaid, kind of like set in like a North Shore sort of like waterfall scene. And then, sorry, I didn't bring that particular notebook with me today.
No worries.
Yeah.
North will be Gaia, so kind of Mother Gaia, but in human form. She's going to be wearing like a necklace of the earth that someone made and just like pleased as punch that we like love her so much that we make little trinkets and offer them to her. And then the last two directions that we did were above and below. And so with above, the element is kind of ethereal. So it'll be a star being kind of just like up in the cosmos. And below will be the hermit, which is going to be a blind old man with a walking stick, kind of like leading the wanderer through like the final phase of the deck, which will be like to go like in through this like cave where there's like potatoes like growing in the ceiling, and like there's a bear like sleeping off in the corner, and then at the very end it kind of comes through back to the dawn of the beginning of the deck.
And what is exactly is an oracle deck? Is it similar to like a tarot deck, or?
Yeah, it's similar, and it's just a little more open to whoever's reading it and whoever's creating it, as far as, you know, like the cards could have had any meaning. So when we really like got this idea, we were driving, I think, and just started like coming up with like, oh, we could do this. Like, we have to do the directions. Like, that we have to do. Like, oh, but then the elements. Like, okay, but what if we worked it out this way? And so each of the suits will have 8 cards that will have like plants in the landscape and animals and a tool. And then kind of like a card that's like between one suit and the next for each. So
Cool.
Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's sweet.
A little bit earlier, you had mentioned that you were a Norse practitioner. Is that where some of the imagery that you had some pretty specific scenes you described. Is that where some of this imagery comes from?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Probably like the most concrete example of that would be the star being or the ancient one. Just that theory that, you know, all of our ancestors are influencing us day to day, or they could. You know, they're not just out there like poking your buttons, I don't think, if you're not looking for it. But, you know, I definitely believe that people that I've loved in the past and people that are just in my lineage in general are influencing my spiritual practice, and kind of I've gotten back to Norse practitioner to be a Norse practitioner because I wanted to connect with a spirituality that wasn't torn away from other cultures or Mod Podge together or whatnot. And I'm like 75% Swedish on my mom's side and a little bit more than that Norwegian on my dad's. So it works out, you know, really well that that's, you know, had colonialism not been a thing. That's what I probably would have been practicing back then.
Cool. Yeah, I've never met anyone who's been able to tell me about like the basic things, because I don't think I've ever met another Norse practitioner. It's very interesting.
Very cool. Yeah, I really like it. For me, the focus is like I definitely like the mythology and all of that, and do get into that. But for me, it's just really that reverence for the earth, and trying to be a part of it more than using it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little hard to do in modern society and whatnot, but definitely in my life I've had a lot of times where going out into nature has been the thing that's kind of held me together.
Yeah, I really kind of resonate with that feeling where like nature is something like it's odd how nature sometimes seems like something you visit, but I mean, it is obviously like we're on top of it,
Yeah,
choking it out to some
absolutely.
degree. And like the idea that you go to a park to experience it when it's experiencing us is a little bit jarring when you start to think back on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's why I'm always going to have nature be such a focus in my artwork, is because I think that nature is kind of like the great unifier. Like, even if it's a tiny apartment window, like in some way, we can all experience some form of nature, even if it's just like the air, And so I think that it's one of the most accessible kind of like themes to use in art, because everybody's like had a moment where they stop and look at a tree, or at least I think everybody has. Maybe it's not. I've spent a lot of time stopping and looking at trees, but I think everybody could, and so it's a great way to kind of incorporate those spiritual themes and be like, hey guys, like, pay attention to how that tree makes you feel. Like, that's a bit of life that I think we all need a little bit more of.
Mm. Yeah, it's cool to hear like what's behind the imagery, because I think a lot of times people hear like the term like spirituality, and then it like the it's so broad that
Oh,
it's hard to
absolutely.
understand. Do you have any feelings on that?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I think that a lot of times spirituality is so prepackaged, and like everyone grows up with a certain perspective on it, and then, a lot of times, like in our 20s or whatever, like we like venture out to find our own. And when you're just like kind of ingenue and like seeking, you get a lot of things that people are trying to sell you, or like paths that people are trying to lead you down. And I think that bucking that and kind of being like, okay, well, what's important to me? Like, what's inherently important to me? What are the things that make me feel alive on a day to day? And like, that's for me where I try to focus my spirituality, is like, okay, like this is what's already important to me, and there's a reason that it's important. And so I try to celebrate that with my art, and then just in my day to day.
Cool.
Okay.
How did you end up being showing at the 410 project, or getting involved with the gallery in general?
Yeah. My wife has lived in Mankato since, sorry, babe, like 2001, I think. Maybe a little bit longer than that. And so she's um known Dana for a long time, and then also just, known and been able to kind of see like 410 really just have this treasured place in the art community. And in 2019, they put a call out for trans, non-binary, and female artists to apply to do a piece directly onto the gallery wall. So they had a mural show, and there's 15 of us that went in and made art directly on the walls, and it was such a cool experience. I spent like 2 weeks beforehand, like outside on a piece of plywood in my yard at like 6 o'clock in the morning, because it was so hot during the day. It was August. So like I would get up super early so I could get as many hours in before it got too hot, like practicing, because I was so worried. I've got back problems, and then just mobility problems in general. So to like plan to like make a mural in like 3 days on a gallery wall, I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to. Like, I have to. And yeah, I ended up painting for 22 hours in 3 days.
Wow.
Which was super intense. I cleaned 0 paintbrushes the whole time I was there. Like, I ended up coming home with a tub full of like just all of my like paint and paintbrushes just covered. But it was a really, really cool experience. And since then, I try to support them as much as I can. And I knew that this year I wanted to have my first solo show. I was like, all right, we got to rip the Band-Aid off. Got to just go for it. Like, I'm never going to like have this show that I feel like has just laid itself out in front of me. Like, that's not how it works. You make the art and then you bring it to show where you are now. I think there's a lot of strive for perfectionism in art, and I definitely um, feel the pressure to get things perfect. But that's not what people love about art. People love seeing the artist. People love seeing feelings that they can identify with, and so we're doing it now, and I think it's going to be really magical.
Cool. Yeah. That wraps up my bit about the 410 project.
Any questions, Willis? Willis is here
Yeah.
if you didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm here. On that getting ready for your first solo show, I think that's like a moment that any artist kind of thinks about and probably has some anxiety about. But like, what's been the process like for you, both in getting ready and the challenges you experience, kind of like trying to prepare yourself and your artwork for this new way of being?
Yeah, for me, probably the thing that comes least naturally to me is the nuts and bolts. Like, I have this many pieces, and they're all matted and framed the same way. We're close to the same way. We're not quite through that process yet, but and like kind of like getting things down so that it runs smoothly when it's time for me to put my stuff up. The other real challenge is just I keep having ideas, and I'm like, oh, I should paint that jacket and put that in the show. And I'm like, oh, okay, we've got a couple weeks here. Like, why don't we finish this giant piece that you just started a few weeks ago first?
You mentioned a piece specifically a little earlier. There was like a big piece. You said it was like 4 feet wide or something.
Yeah,
like that.
it's 4 feet
What's that
tall and
like?
3 feet wide. It's called Wild Moon. That's the one I just started like a week and a half ago.
Okay.
And I'd had it on the docket and like kind of like reserved this time to be working on it. But I didn't plan for it to be this big. As the type of artist and just the type of brain that I have, I am really bad at math. And Michael's was having a sale on canvases. And I was like, oh, I wanted to get a piece because I'm going to be starting a piece during my opening. I'm going to have a blank canvas for people to write when a time that their heart felt wild was. So when I have people write that during the opening, and then I'm going to make a piece called Wild Heart. And so I was like, oh, I'll get a bigger than my normal biggish size canvases to do that on. And I thought I was just going up like 10 inches, both dimensions, and it's like twice as big as I thought it was going to be. So I was like, oh, okay, I haven't started Wild Moon yet. I have this giant canvas. Like, this would be great to have it be like kind of the focus, and it really wraps up this Me and the Moon series that I've been doing too. So I think it'll be a perfect addition.
Awesome.
Cool.
What is your planning process like for? I mean, you've kind of mentioned that you have like some kind of foresight going into these things. Like, what in your mind's eye, what are you seeing in these paintings? And do you have a whole queue of things that are coming towards
it's
us?
kind of a conglomeration of like Google Docs that I just add like ideas to. Like, maybe someday I should do like custom Sasquatch portraits, or like whatever the ideas are that I come up with. And then usually it's in my sketchbook that I kind of like, okay, I keep making moons. I found myself where I was like, okay, I made a bunch of moons in my Halloween collection, and then I just started another piece with the moon, and then I just play under these moon ornaments. I'm like, okay. And then for this collection, I actually did like, okay, I want to do some minis. I want to do this many watercolor pieces, and like I kind of sketched them all out really roughly at the same time. And so this collection is definitely much more organized, whereas the Wild series is just sort of like, I know that like Untamed Nature is always going to be something that I want to make art about, so it's just kind of like a recurring thing that I add to as I go. But it's been really cool to kind of like rein myself in a little bit and plan things, and then be like, okay, well, what are the elements I'm going to use? Like, let's have some of that the same. Let's have kind of the color themes the same. And it was good timing to do it too, because it's definitely gonna look really cohesive for the show.
Nice. And what would you want to leave people with who might be interested in coming to your show? What would you want to let them know about it before they arrive?
Yeah, the whole goal of the show, my hope for the show, is that viewers will find a soft, still place within themselves and then be able to find a deeper appreciation for the divine interconnection, between people, between us and nature, between spirituality and nature and us. And it's really inspired by my own moments of that, like, nature inspired, like, transcendence, where you just kind of like feel like, okay, yeah, like, I'm just sitting in Sibley painting or whatever it is, but like, this is an important moment, like, this is the sort of moment that really matters to me. And so I kind of want to encapsulate that and inspire people to find more of that for themselves.
Cool.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Any final plugs or places you want to send people, things we didn't get to?
Sorry, that cut out a little.
Any plugs for things you want to share, places you want to send people, or anything we didn't get to?
Sorry, any plugs for like other...
Yeah, just anything you want to
Yeah.
share.
Yeah, for sure.
Instagram.
One thing that I'm
shows.
excited about right now is the Mankato Art Crawl. It's coming up on
Oh.
April 15th. And it is it's kind of all of the art supporting businesses and then art stores in Mankato we're gonna have like a card that people like bring into each place and get like signed. And then we'll have prizes for people that go to like the most places, or like a raffle for like if you've participated in certain things. And there's so many local places that are going to be participating, which is really cool. The best place to find info on it is on the Facebook page. But a bunch of places are having live local music, or artists doing demonstrations, or artists that are just going to be live painting, or really whatever their craft is. I know there's some other artisans that are going to be doing their thing at local places, which is super
Cool.
exciting.
My partner and I will be playing outside of 108, and then she'll also be selling her art. So we're excited for that too.
Super cool. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to be at the Enchanted Muse. We're
cool.
just going to have it open for people to come hang out and work on whatever they're working on.
Cool.
So
Nice.
I'm going to...
We're going to have to come check that out after our set.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, how about where can people find you if they want to buy your art, or if they want to social media plugs, or
Yeah. Social media is the best place for both. Instagram is at Markana Art, which is MarkanaArt. And then on Facebook, it is Markana Art by Markus Bean. And right now, I'm doing sales through DMs, but I'm definitely working on getting a website up. It's a lot of back end.
Yeah, we're putting together a website too, and
Yeah.
it's a doozy. Well, yeah. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for
We
having
look
me.
forward to the opening.
Thank
We'll be
you.
there.
Yeah.
Well,
Congratulations. Oh, congratulations. Man, I can't say that one. Congratulations on your first show. It's very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
I'm
you.
really stoked.
All right, and we're clear.